The stars were dying. Not the real stars, but the lights that represented every human colony, every space station, every hope that mankind had spread across the galaxy. One by one, they went dark on the massive display screen in the command center. Of Earth's last orbital defense station, Jack Morrison stared at the screen from his pilot's chair, his hands gripping the controls of his cargo ship. The Defiant Dawn was not much to look at. She was old, patched up in a dozen places, and her engines made strange noises that would worry any sane pilot. But she was fast, and more importantly, she was his. "Another system just went dark," said Commander Lisa Barnes, her voice tight with fear and anger. "The Vorthek hit the Centauri colonies 3 hours ago. No survivors." Jack had known Lisa for 10 years. They had served together in the Marines before he left to become a freelance pilot. She was tough, smart, and never showed fear, but today he could see it in her eyes. The same fear that everyone felt when they looked at the enemy ships approaching. Earth, the Vorthek were not like anything humanity had ever fought. They were part machine, part alien, and completely without mercy. Their ships were black metal beasts that moved through space like living things. Their soldiers were once living. Beings from dozens of different species, but now they were more machine than flesh. Silver cables ran under their skin, and their eyes glowed with cold blue light. For 3 years, the Vorthek had been moving through the galaxy like a plague. They conquered every world they found. They took the survivors and turned them into more soldiers for their army. World after world fell to them, and now they were coming for Earth. "How long do we have?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. Lisa looked at her screens. "Their main fleet will be here in 6 hours. We have maybe 200 ships left." "They have over 3,000. Jack nodded. He had seen this coming. For months. The Galactic Coalition had been falling apart piece by piece. The alien races that had once been humanity's allies had either been conquered or had fled to the far edges of the galaxy. Earth stood alone. A new voice came through the communication system. It was weak and filled with static, but Jack recognized it immediately. Admiral Kate Sullivan, the last remaining commander of the Coalition forces. "This is Admiral Sullivan broadcasting from Arcturus Prime," the voice said. "To anyone who can hear this message, I have information that could save us all. The archaeological team on Kepler Station found something before the Vorthek hit them. Ancient technology from the first galactic civilization. They called it the Nexus Core?" Jack leaned forward. He had heard stories about the ancient races, the ones who had built the first cities among the stars and then vanished without a trace. Most people thought they were just myths. "The core is hidden in the Kepler Nebula," Sullivan continued. "Coordinates follow. It's a weapon, but not like anything we've built. The research team believed it could stop the Vorthek advance. I'm sending this to every ship, every station, every person who still fights for freedom. Someone has to reach it. Someone has to try." The message ended with a series of numbers that appeared on Jack's navigation screen. Lisa walked over to his ship and looked at the coordinates. "That's in the middle of nowhere," she said. "Past the outer colonies, deep in nebula space, it would take days to get there." 4 days, Jack said, already running calculations in his head. "Maybe 3 if I push the engines hard?" Lisa stared at him. "You're thinking about going, aren't you?" Jack looked around the command center. Dozens of men and women worked at their stations, preparing for a battle they all knew they could not win. These were good people, brave people, and they were going to die defending Earth unless someone could find this weapon and bring it back in time. "Someone has to try," he said. "Jack, this is crazy. We don't even know if this thing exists. It could be a trap or just the desperate hope of a dying admiral. And, if it's real?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the display screen where more lights were going dark every hour. "If it's real, then maybe we have a chance." An alarm started ringing throughout the station. A technician called out from his station. "Long-range sensors are picking up the Vorthek advanced scouts. They're still 2 days out, but they're moving fast." Jack stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. He could see Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere down there, his sister Carol was probably getting her kids ready for school, not knowing that this might be their last normal day. His parents lived in a retirement community in Florida, and they still sent him messages about when he was going to settle down and give them grandchildren. "I have to go," he said. Lisa nodded slowly. "I know, but Jack, even if you find this weapon, even if it works, you'll never make it back in time. The Vorthak will be here before you can return. Then you'll have to hold them off." "With what?" "We're outnumbered 15-1, Jack turned back to her. "With everything you have, make them pay for every mile of space, every minute of time. Be the heroes that Earth needs you to be." Lisa smiled, but it was a sad smile. "You always were the crazy one." Jack went back to his ship and started the pre-flight sequence. The Defiant Dawn's engines came to life with their familiar rumble. He had flown this ship through asteroid fields, past hostile aliens, and into more dangerous situations than he could count. But this felt different. This felt like the end of everything. As he prepared to leave, other ships started moving into position around Earth. Some were military vessels, sleek and deadly. Others were cargo ships like his, converted with weapons and shields. Even some civilian craft had joined the defense, their crews knowing they were probably going to die but unable to just run away. "Defiant Dawn, this is Control," came Lisa's voice over the radio. "You are cleared for departure. Good luck, Jack." "Thanks, Lisa. Take care of yourself." "Jack, wait." Her voice was quieter now, more personal. "If you do find this weapon, if it works, remember us. Remember what we're fighting for." Jack looked down at Earth one more time. "I will." He pushed the engines to full power, and the Defiant Dawn shot away from Earth, past the moon, past Mars, and into the dark space between the stars. Behind him, the lights of human civilization prepared for their last stand. Ahead of him lay the unknown and perhaps the only hope for survival. The journey to the Kepler Nebula would take him through empty space, past dead worlds and abandoned stations. He would be alone with his thoughts, his fears, and his determination to save the people he loved. Jack Morrison had answered the call when the galaxy needed a hero, but he had no idea what he would find when he reached his destination. As Earth grew smaller behind him, Jack set course for the coordinates Admiral Sullivan had given him. The Nexus core was waiting somewhere in the nebula, and with it, the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The clock was ticking, and humanity's last hope was flying alone through the darkness between the stars. The Kepler Nebula stretched out before Jack like a massive purple and gold cloud. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. The gas and dust that made up the nebula could hide a ship from sensors, but it could also tear apart anything that moved too fast through it. Jack had been flying for 3 days straight. His eyes burned from staring at the navigation screens, and his back ached from sitting in the pilot's chair for so long. The Defiant Dawn's engines had been running at maximum power the entire time, and he could hear them starting to strain. "Come on, girl," he whispered to his ship. "Just a little further." The coordinates Admiral Sullivan had given him pointed to the center of the nebula. It was a place where no sane pilot would go. The radiation was strong enough to kill a person in minutes, and the gravitational fields could crush a ship like an empty can. But if the Nexus core was really there, Jack had to find it. His radar started beeping. Something was out there, hidden in the swirling gases of the nebula. Jack slowed his ship and moved forward carefully. The beeping got stronger as he got closer to whatever was waiting for him. Then he saw it. A ship floating dead in space. It was huge, at least 3 times bigger than any human vessel Jack had ever seen. The hull was made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift colors in the nebulas. Light. Strange symbols were carved into the sides, and the whole ship had a feeling of great age. "What the hell is that?" Jack said to himself. He flew closer, scanning the ship with every sensor he had. The readings were strange. The ship was definitely dead, no power, no life signs, no movement, but there was something else. Another ship, much smaller, attached to the side of the ancient vessel like a tiny bug on a giant's back. Jack recognized the smaller ship immediately. It was a coalition research vessel, the kind used by archaeological teams to study alien ruins. Someone had been here before him, and they might still be alive. He docked his ship next to the research vessel and put on his spacesuit. The airlocks connected with a soft hiss, and Jack stepped into the other ship. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls, and the air felt cold and stale. "Hello?" he called out. "Is anyone here?" A voice came from deeper in the ship. "Who's there?" "Stay back," alarmed. Jack raised his hands even though the other person couldn't see him. "My name is Jack Morrison. I'm looking for the Nexus Core. Admiral Sullivan sent me." There was a long pause. Then footsteps, and a man appeared at the end of the hallway. He was tall and thin, with dark hair and tired eyes. He held a pistol in his hand, but he lowered it when he saw Jack. "You're human," the man said with relief. "I'm Captain Ryan Torres, Coalition Archaeological Corps. I've been stuck here for 2 weeks. What happened to your team?" Jack asked. Torres's face went dark. "The Vorthek found us. Most of my people were killed in the attack. I managed to get away, but my ship was damaged. I've been hiding here ever since, trying to figure out how to get home." Jack looked around the research ship. It was clear that it had been through a battle. Burn marks covered the walls, and several computer screens were cracked and dead. "What is this place?" Jack asked. Torres gestured toward the ancient ship. "That's an Ashanti vessel. They were the first spacefaring race in the galaxy, maybe 10,000 years ago. They built the first cities among the stars, explored every corner of known space. Then one day, they just vanished. And the Nexus Core? It's inside that ship. We spent months trying to understand it before the Vorthak attack. Jack, this thing is not just a weapon. It's something much more dangerous and much more powerful." Torres led Jack through the airlock and into the ancient ship. The inside was even stranger than the outside. The walls seemed to be made of living metal that pulsed with a faint light. Corridors stretched out in directions that didn't make sense, and the air hummed with energy that made Jack's skin crawl. "The Ashanti didn't build ships like we do," Torres explained as they walked. "They grew them. These vessels are part machine, part living organism. They respond to thoughts and emotions as much as they do to physical controls." They came to a large chamber in the center of the ship. In the middle of the room was a sphere about the size of a basketball, floating in the air above a pedestal. It was made of the same strange metal as the ship, but it glowed with an inner light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "The Nexus Core," Torres said quietly. Jack stared at the sphere. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Just looking at it made his head feel strange, like there were voices whispering at the edge of his hearing. "What does it do?" Jack asked. Torres pulled out a damaged tablet computer and showed Jack the screen. It was filled with equations and diagrams that meant nothing to him. "Near as we can figure, it's a consciousness transfer device. It can link minds across vast distances, allowing them to share thoughts, memories, and experiences. The Ashanti used it to connect every member of their species into a single network." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "A hive mind?" "Not exactly. From what we learned, each individual kept their own personality and free will, but they could communicate instantly with anyone else in the network. They could share knowledge, coordinate actions, and experience each other's emotions. And then they disappeared?" Torres nodded. "The records we found suggest they faced some kind of threat, something that forced them to make a choice. They could either fight as individuals and probably lose, or they could use the core to unite their entire species and transcend physical existence." "Transcend? What does that mean?" "We're not sure. But the last records talk about moving beyond the physical world, becoming something more than flesh and blood. The Ashanti chose to leave this reality behind rather than face whatever was coming for them." Jack walked closer to the core. The whispers in his head got louder, and he could almost understand what they were saying, almost. "How is this supposed to stop the Vorthak?" he asked. Torres looked uncomfortable. "That's the problem. The device requires a willing sacrifice. Someone has to serve as the central node, the connection point for every mind in the network. That person experiences everything that happens to anyone connected to the core, every pain, every death, every moment of suffering, and you were going to do it? I was the team leader. It was my responsibility. But the Vorthak attacked before we could complete our research. We never got the chance to test it. Jack reached out toward the core, but Torres grabbed his arm. Don't touch it, Torres warned. Even brief contact can create a partial link. When I accidentally brushed against it last week, I felt the minds of every living being within 100 light years. The weight of all that consciousness almost drove me insane. Jack pulled his hand back, but he couldn't stop staring at the sphere. If it works, if someone is willing to make the sacrifice, could it really stop the Vorthak? Maybe. The core could link the minds of every human, every alien, every living being who opposes the Vorthak. Imagine being able to coordinate the actions of billions of people across the galaxy. Imagine sharing knowledge instantly, planning attacks with perfect timing, knowing what your enemy is going to do before they do it. Suddenly, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Torres ran to a wall panel and checked the readings. Vorthak? Scouts, he said with fear in his voice. They found us. Jack looked through a window and saw 3 black ships emerging from the nebula. They were small and fast, designed for hunting. Their weapons were already charging. We need to get out of here, Jack said. My ship won't fly. The engines are dead. Jack grabbed Torres by the arm. Then we take the core and run in my ship. Torres shook his head. You don't understand. The core is connected to this ship. If we remove it, we could damage it beyond repair. We need time to study it, to understand how to use it safely. The first laser blast hit the ancient ship, making the whole structure shake. The living metal walls pulsed with pain, and Jack could feel the ship's distress like a physical weight in his chest. We don't have time, Jack said. He reached out and grabbed the Nexus core with both hands the moment his skin touched the sphere. Jack's mind exploded with sensation. He felt the thoughts of every person on Earth, every alien in the galaxy, every living being that had ever existed. Pain, joy, love, fear, hope, despair, it all crashed into his consciousness at once. For a moment, he was everyone and no one. He was Lisa Barnes, fighting desperately to defend Earth. He was a Vorthak soldier, feeling the last traces of his original personality being crushed by cybernetic programming. He was an alien child on a distant world, crying for parents who would never come home. Then the connection broke, and Jack was himself again. He was lying on the floor of the ship, the core clutched in his hands with Torres kneeling beside him. Are you okay? Torres asked. Jack got to his feet, though his legs felt weak. I'm fine. But we need to go, now. Another blast hit the ship, and this time pieces of the ceiling started falling. Jack and Torres ran for the airlock, carrying the core between them. They made it to the Defiant Dawn just as the Vorthak ships began firing in earnest. Jack threw himself into the pilot's seat and fired up the engines. The ship shot forward into the nebula, weaving between clouds of gas and debris. Behind them, the ancient Ashanti vessel was coming apart under the Vorthak attack. Jack stared at the star chart on his navigation screen. The Nexus core sat in the corner of his ship, wrapped in a protective case that Torres had built. Even through the shielding, Jack could feel it humming with power. The voices in his head had gotten quieter since they left the nebula, but they never completely went away. We need help, Jack said to Torres, who was working on repairs to the ship's communication system. This thing is too powerful for just the two of us to handle. Torres looked up from his work. Where do you want to go? Most of the coalition bases have been destroyed. The Vorthak are everywhere. Jack pointed to a system on the edge of the chart. New Denver. It's a mining colony in the outer rim. My friend Steve Martinez is there, if he's still alive. He was a colonel in the Marines before he retired to run security for the miners. That's 3 days away, Torres said. Do you think we have that much time? Jack thought about Earth, about Lisa, and all the people fighting to defend it. We have to make time. I can't use the core alone. I need people I can trust. The journey to New Denver took them through space that had once been busy with trade ships and passenger vessels. Now it was empty except for the occasional wreckage of destroyed stations. The Vorthak had been thorough in their conquest. On the second day, they picked up a distress signal from a damaged freighter. Jack wanted to help, but Torres convinced him to keep going. "If we stop for every ship in trouble, we'll never reach New Denver," he said. "And without the core, everyone dies anyway." It was a hard choice, but Jack knew Torres was right. Still, he felt guilty as they passed the drifting ship. The voices from the core seemed to get louder, as if they were angry about the people he was leaving behind. New Denver was a small world covered in mountains and deep valleys. The mining operation was built into the side of a massive cliff, with tunnels that went down for miles. When Jack's ship approached the planet, he was surprised to see that the colony was still functioning. Ships were moving in and out of the atmosphere, and the communication towers were still broadcasting. "New Denver Control, this is the Defiant. Dawn requesting permission to land," Jack said into his radio. "Defiant Dawn, this is Control. State your business." "I'm looking for Colonel Steve Martinez." "Tell him Jack Morrison is here." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came on the radio. Jack Morrison?" "This is Steve. Where the hell have you been?" Jack smiled for the first time in days. "It's a long story, Steve. I need to talk to you in person. Come on down, landing pad 7. And Jack, it's good to hear your voice." Steve Martinez was waiting for them when they landed. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from years of fighting. He had been Jack's commanding officer during the war against the Rigel pirates, and Jack trusted him more than almost anyone. "You look terrible," Steve said as Jack climbed out of his ship. "I feel worse. Steve, I need your help." "The galaxy needs your help." Steve looked at Torres, who was carrying the case containing the core. "Who's your friend?" "Captain Ryan Torres, Coalition Archaeological Corps. Steve, we found something. Something that might be able to stop the Vorthak." Steve's expression became serious. "Come on, let's talk somewhere private." He led them to his office, deep inside the mining complex. The walls were lined with pictures of his old Marine unit, and his desk was covered with reports about the colony's defenses. "The Vorthak hit us 2 weeks ago," Steve said as they sat. "Down, small force, maybe 50 ships. We fought them off, but just barely. They'll be back with more ships soon." Jack opened the case and showed Steve the core. "This is called the Nexus Core. It's a weapon, but not the kind you're thinking." "Oh, for the next hour?" Jack and Torres explained everything they had learned about the core. Steve listened without interrupting, his face getting more serious with each detail. "So you're telling me this thing can connect minds across the galaxy?" Steve asked when they finished. "That's right," Torres said. "But it requires someone to serve as the central node. That person would experience everything that happens to everyone connected to the network." Steve was quiet for a long moment. "And you think I should be that person?" "I think we need to find someone who's willing," Jack said. "Someone strong, enough to handle the burden." "It would kill them, wouldn't it?" "Maybe not right away, but eventually," Jack nodded. "Probably. The Ashanti record suggests that the central node eventually transcends physical existence. They leave their body behind and become something else." Steve stood up and walked to the window. Outside, miners were working to repair damage from the Vorthak attack. Many of them were refugees from other worlds, people who had lost everything to the enemy. "I've got over 2,000 people here," Steve said. "Men, women, children. They're counting on me to keep them safe. If I use this thing, if I become the central node, what happens to them?" "Someone else would have to take over," Jack said. "But Steve, if we don't try this, everyone dies anyway. The Vorthak will come back, and next time they'll bring enough ships to finish the job." Steve turned back to them. "Show me how it works." Torres shook his head. "It's too dangerous. Even a small connection can be overwhelming." "I've been in combat for 30 years, Steve said. "I can handle a little mental strain." Jack looked at the core. He could feel it calling to him, wanting to be used. "Just a small connection, a few seconds." Torres set up a portable scanner and connected it to the core. "This will limit the connection to just the 3 of us. Any longer than 10 seconds and we shut it down. Jack placed his hands on the core and immediately felt the familiar rush of alien consciousness. But this time, instead of the overwhelming flood of every mind in the galaxy, he was connected only to Steve and Torres. He felt Steve's determination, his willingness to sacrifice himself for the people he protected. He felt Torres's guilt over the death of his research team, and his desperate hope that the Corps could somehow make their sacrifice meaningful, and through Steve, he felt something else, the miners outside, working to repair their home. The refugees, in the dormitories, trying to rebuild their lives. The guards on the walls, watching for signs of the enemy's return. My God, Steve whispered, I can feel them all. The connection lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like hours. When it ended, all three men were breathing hard. That was just the people in this colony, Jack said. Imagine feeling everyone. On Earth, everyone in the galaxy. Steve sat down heavily. I understand now. Whoever uses this thing won't just be connected to everyone. They'll be responsible for everyone. A klaxon started ringing throughout the colony. Steve grabbed his radio. Martinez here. What's the situation? Colonel, we've got ships approaching the system. Looks like Vorthix scouts. Steve looked at Jack and Torres. They found us. How long do we have? Maybe an hour before they get here. In force? But sir, there's something else. We're picking up a signal from one of the approaching ships. It's not Vorthak. Steve frowned. What do you mean? It's a coalition frequency. Someone's trying to contact us. The three men ran to the communication center. On the main screen, they could see a small ship approaching the planet. It was moving strangely, not like the smooth flight of a Vorthak vessel. This is Dr. Amy Johnson aboard the research vessel Galileo, came a voice over the radio. Is anyone there? I'm being chased by Vorthak ships. I need help. Steve looked at Jack. You know her? I know the name. She's one of the top xenobiologists in the coalition. What's she doing out here? Only one way to find out, Steve said. He keyed the radio. Dr. Johnson, this is Colonel Martinez. We'll provide cover fire. Get down here as fast as you can. The small ship dove toward the planet's surface, with three Vorthik fighters right behind it. The colony's defense guns opened fire, forcing the enemy ships to break off their attack. Dr. Johnson's ship landed hard on the mining pad, smoke pouring from its engines. A few minutes later, Amy Johnson walked into the communication center. She was a small woman with short red hair and intense green eyes. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Thank God, she said when she saw them. I've been running for a week. The Vorthak destroyed my research station, but I managed to escape with my data. What kind of data? Jack asked. Amy pulled out a small computer tablet. I've been studying captured Vorthik specimens for months. I found something important, something that could help us fight them. She showed them the screen, which was filled with biological diagrams and medical scans. The Vorthak aren't just cybernetic beings. They're slaves. The machine parts in their bodies control their minds, suppress their original personalities, but the control isn't perfect. What do you mean? Torres asked. The cybernetic implants can be overloaded. If you hit them with the right kind of neural frequency, you can disrupt the connection between the organic brain and the machine parts. For a few minutes, they remember who they used to be. Jack stared at the data. And the Nexus core generates neural frequencies. Exactly. If we can modify the core's output, we might be able to free the Vorthak from their machine masters. Turn them back into the people they used to be. Steve looked out the window, where more ships were appearing in the sky. We don't have much time. The Vorthak main force will be here soon. There's something else, Amy said. One of the Vorthak ships that was chasing me isn't like the others. The damaged Vorthak ship was falling toward the planet's surface. Jack watched it on the radar screen as it spun out of control, leaving a trail of sparks and debris. Whatever was happening to the pilot, he was losing the fight to keep his ship in the air. It's going to crash in the Western Valley, Steve said, tracking the ship's path. About 20 miles from here. We need to get there before the other Vortex ships do, Jack said. He was already putting on his jacket and checking his weapons. If that pilot is really fighting against his programming, he might be our only chance to understand how to free the others. Amy Johnson grabbed her medical kit. I'm coming with you. If we're going to help this Vortex, I need to study his cybernetic implants up close. Steve shook his head. Too dangerous. I should send a squad of Marines with you. No time, Jack said. Besides, if we show up with a bunch of armed soldiers, he might think we're trying to capture him. This has to be just a few of us. Double quotes. Torres picked up the case containing the Nexus core. I'm coming too. The core might be able to help break through his programming. 10 minutes later, they were flying toward the crash site in a small transport ship. Jack piloted while Amy worked on modifying her medical scanner to detect cybernetic frequencies. Torres sat with the core in his lap, monitoring its energy output. I'm picking up the wreckage, Jack said as they flew over a ridge. Looks like he managed to land instead of crash. The ship is damaged but intact. The Vortex vessel was sitting in a shallow crater, steam rising from its overheated engines. It was smaller than most Vortex ships, designed for scouting rather than combat. Parts of the hull were blackened and twisted, but the main structure was still solid. Jack landed their transport 50 yards away from the wreck. Remember, we don't know what we're walking into. This could still be a trap. They approached the alien ship carefully. Amy's scanner was beeping steadily, picking up energy signatures from inside the vessel. There's definitely someone alive in there, she said. The readings are strange, though. The cybernetic implants are fluctuating like they're fighting against each other. The ship's airlock was partially open. Jack could see inside to a dark corridor filled with the blue glow of Vortex technology. Everything was silent except for the sound of damaged systems sparking and hissing. Hello? Jack called out. We're here to help, a voice answered from inside the ship, but it sounded wrong. It was speaking in two different tones at the same time, like two people trying to talk through the same mouth. Stay away, the voice said. I am Vorthok. I serve the Empire. I must destroy you. Then, in a different tone, please help me. I can't control myself. The machines in my head are too strong. Jack looked at his companions. The pilot is definitely fighting his programming. They entered the ship slowly. The corridor was narrow and lined with strange, organic-looking technology. Everything pulsed with the same blue light that came from Vorthix cybernetic implants. They found the pilot in the ship's control room. He was sitting in a chair that seemed to be growing out of the floor, connected to the ship's systems by dozens of cables and tubes. But it was clear that something was wrong with the connection. Sparks flew from several of the cables, and the pilot was twitching like he was having a seizure. The Vorthak looked like he had once been human, but now silver. Wires ran under his skin and his eyes glowed with blue light. Half of his face was covered by a metal plate, and one of his arms had been replaced entirely by a mechanical limb. I am Zex 7, he said in the mechanical voice. I serve the Vorthik Empire. I will destroy all organic life. Then his expression changed, and when he spoke again, his voice sounded more human. My name was Alex Turner. I was a pilot for the Coalition. They took me on Rigel Station 3 years ago. Amy stepped forward with her scanner. The cybernetic control systems are malfunctioning. That's why he can access his original memories. Can you help him? Jack asked. Maybe, but I need to get him out of that chair first. Those cables are what's keeping the machine parts connected to his brain. Jack moved toward the Vorthak, but the alien suddenly lunged at him. His mechanical arm grabbed Jack by the throat and lifted him off the ground. I must kill you, Zex 7 said in his machine voice. It is my purpose. Alex, Jack gasped. Fight. You're stronger than the machines. For a moment, the mechanical grip loosened. I'm trying, the human voice said. But it hurts so much. The machines, they're in my head, telling me to kill, to destroy everything. Torres opened the case. Containing the Nexus core? Jack, if I activate the core, I might be able to disrupt his cybernetic systems. Do it, Jack said, still struggling against the Vorthak's grip. Torres placed his hands on the core, and immediately the chamber filled with a humming sound. The blue lights on the ship's walls flickered, and Zek 7 suddenly released Jack and stumbled backward. "What's happening to me?" the Vorthik said, and now his voice was completely human. "I can think clearly for the first time in years." Amy quickly scanned him with her medical equipment. The core's neural frequencies interfering with his cybernetic implants. "It's like jamming a radio signal?" Jack rubbed his throat where the mechanical hand had grabbed him. "Alex, can you hear me? Do you remember who you are?" The former human nodded, tears running down his face. "I remember everything. My ship, my crew, the attack on Rigel Station. They captured me and brought me to their conversion facility. They cut into my brain, put machines inside me, made me forget who I was. How many others are there like you?" Torres asked, still maintaining contact with the core. "Thousands, maybe millions. Every species they conquer, they convert the survivors into soldiers, but the process isn't perfect. Sometimes people fight back, remember pieces of their old lives. The Empire calls them defective and usually destroys them." Amy looked at her readings. The cybernetic control network extends throughout his entire nervous system. It's integrated with his brain, his spinal cord, even his major organs. Removing it would kill him. "But the core can disrupt it," Jack said. "For a while," Torres said. "But I can't maintain this connection forever. And even if I could, we can't free every Vorthak soldier one at a time." Alex looked at them with hope in his eyes. "There might be a way. The Empire has a central control facility, a massive station called the Nexus Hub. All the cybernetic implants and Vorthak soldiers are linked to it. If you could get the core close enough to that station, you might be able to disrupt every implant in the Empire at once." "Where is this station?" Jack asked. "At the center of the galaxy in the Vorthak home system. It's the most heavily defended location in the Empire. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, and the Emperor himself." Jack felt his heart sink. The center of the galaxy was weeks away, and they would have to fight through the entire Vorthak fleet to get there. "There's something else," Alex said. "The Empire isn't just conquering the galaxy for territory. They're preparing for something they call the Dark Tide, some kind of threat from outside our galaxy. That's supposed to arrive soon. The Emperor believes that only by converting every organic being into cybernetic soldiers can the galaxy survive." "What kind of threat?" Amy asked. "I don't know. The information is restricted to the highest levels of the Empire. But whatever it is, the Emperor is terrified of it." Suddenly, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Alex looked at the control panels with fear in his eyes. "Imperial ships," he said. "They found my crash site. We need to get out of here now." Through the ship's windows, they could see black shapes descending from the sky. 3 Vorthak fighters moving fast and preparing to attack. "How long can you maintain the connection to the core?" Jack asked Torres. "A few more minutes at most. After that, he'll revert to his programmed state." Jack made a decision. "Alex, will you help us? Will you fight against the Empire that enslaved you?" The former human nodded without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes to stop them, to free the others like me. Then we need to get moving. We have to gather more allies, build a real resistance movement. The core is powerful, but we need an army to get it to the Nexus Hub." They ran from the wrecked ship just as the first laser blasts hit the ground around them. Alex followed them, moving awkwardly as his human mind tried to control his partially. Mechanical body died as they reached their transport ship. Torres lost his connection to the core. Alex immediately stiffened, and the blue glow returned to his eyes. "I am Vorthak," he said in his mechanical voice. "I serve the Empire." But then he shook his head, and his human personality reasserted itself. "It's okay," he said. "The brief exposure to the core has weakened the control systems. I can fight them off for a while on my own." They took off just as the Vorthak fighters reached the crash site. Jack pushed the engines to maximum power, racing for the safety of New Denver's defensive shields. "We need to get back to the colony," he said. "We need to warn Steve about what's coming." Because now Jack understood the true scope of what they were facing. The Vorthak Empire wasn't just an enemy to be defeated. It was an entire galaxy of enslaved beings, controlled by machines and forced to fight against their will. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, something called the Dark Tide was coming. The galaxy needed more than a hero. It needed a miracle. The galaxy was burning. From his command ship at the edge of the Vorthak home system, Jack Morrison could see the massive space battle raging around the Nexus hub. Thousands of ships fought in the darkness between the stars, their weapons lighting up space like deadly fireworks. It had taken 6 months to reach this moment. 6 months of gathering allies, building a resistance movement, and learning to use the Nexus core without losing his mind. Jack was no longer the same man who had fled Earth with a desperate hope. The core had changed him, connected him to millions of beings across the galaxy, and the weight of their combined will had made him something more than human. "Status report," Jack said to General Patricia Davis, who had become his second-in-command after they freed her from a Vorthak prison ship. "We've broken through the outer defenses," Davis said, studying the tactical display. "But the hub's main shields are still up. We need to get the core within 1,000 kilometers to affect the cybernetic control network." Jack looked at the Nexus hub on the screen. It was a massive structure larger than most planets, covered in weapons and shields. Millions of Vorthak soldiers defended it, but Jack knew that deep down, most of them were prisoners just like Alex had been. "How many ships have we lost?" Jack asked. 300 so far. But the Vorthak have lost twice that number. Some of their pilots are breaking free of their programming mid-battle. The closer we get to the hub, the more the core affects them. Jack nodded. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. Every ship that died, every person who sacrificed themselves. Jack felt their loss through his connection to the core. Their pain became his pain. Their hopes became his responsibility. "Sir," called Captain Helen Cruz from the navigation station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak Emperor himself." Jack had been expecting this. "Put him through." The main screen changed to show a figure that barely looked alive. The Vorthak Emperor was more machine than organic being, his body replaced almost entirely by cybernetic parts. Only his eyes remained recognizably biological, and they burned with ancient hatred. "You are the one they called Jack Morrison," the Emperor said in a voice like grinding metal. "You carry the weapon of the Ashanti." "I carry hope," Jack replied. "Something you tried to destroy." "Hope?" The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You understand nothing. I have seen the Dark Tide. I have watched it devour entire galaxies. Only by uniting every mind under my control can we survive. What is coming?" "By enslaving them, you mean by saving them. Organic beings are weak, chaotic, unpredictable. They fight among themselves while extinction approaches. I have brought order, unity, purpose." Jack felt the core pulsing beside him, its power growing stronger as they moved closer to the hub. Through it, he could sense the Emperor's fear. Beneath all the metal and machinery, the ancient being was terrified of the approaching threat. "There's another way," Jack said. "Unity without slavery. Connection without control." The Ashanti understood this. "The Ashanti are gone," the Emperor snarled. "They chose transcendence over survival. I will not make the same mistake." The transmission ended, and immediately the space around Jack's ship erupted with weapons fire. The Emperor had sent his personal guard, the most powerful ships in the Vorthak fleet, to stop them. "Evasive maneuvers," Jack ordered. "Get us to the hub." The ship shook under enemy fire as Helen Cruz piloted them through the battle. Around them, the Resistance fleet fought desperately to clear a path. Jack saw ships exploding, their crews dying to buy him a few more seconds. "Core activation in 30 seconds, Torres called out from his position. He had spent months learning to safely channel the core's power, and now he was the only one who could operate it at full strength without losing his mind. "Wait," Alex said from the station. The former Vorthak soldier had become invaluable as a tactical advisor, his knowledge of Empire systems helping them plan this assault. I'm detecting something strange from the hub. It's not just a control center. There's something else inside it. Jack looked at the readings Alex was showing him. Deep within the hub's core was an energy signature unlike anything they had seen. Before, it was vast, alien, and somehow familiar. "My God," Amy Johnson said from her science station. "Jack, that's not Vorthek technology, it's Ashanti." "What do you mean?" "The hub is built around an Ashanti device. Something much larger and more powerful than the core we carry." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The original Nexus? The one the Ashanti used to transcend physical existence. Suddenly, everything made sense. The Emperor hadn't just conquered the galaxy. He had found the Ashanti's final creation and corrupted it, using their technology of unity to impose his will instead of offering choice. "Core activation in 10 seconds, Torres announced. "Wait," Jack said. "Change of plans. We're not just disrupting the cybernetic network. We're going to connect to the original Nexus." "That's insane," Davis said. "We don't know what that thing can do." "I do," Jack said quietly. The voices in his head, the ones that had whispered to him ever since he first touched the core, were getting louder. They weren't random thoughts or alien consciousness. They were the Ashanti themselves, still existing within their creation, waiting for someone to find them. "Activating the core," Torres said. Power flowed through the ship as the Nexus core came. Online, Jack placed his hands on the device and immediately felt his consciousness expand. He was connected to every member of the Resistance fleet, to Alex and the other freed Vorthek soldiers, to the prisoners still trapped within their cybernetic programming, but this time, instead of being overwhelmed by the connection, Jack guided it. He reached out across space to the Nexus hub, past its shields and weapons, down to the ancient Ashanti device at its heart. The moment he made contact, everything changed. Jack found himself standing in a place that wasn't quite real, surrounded by beings of pure light and thought. The Ashanti had not died or disappeared. They had chosen to exist beyond physical form, waiting for the galaxy to be ready to join them. "We have watched," said a voice that spoke directly to his mind. "We have waited. The one called Emperor fears the dark tide, but he does not understand." What is it?" Jack asked. "Not what, who. The dark tide is another galaxy's response to the same choice we faced. They chose differently. They chose consumption over transcendence, conquest over unity. They devour other galaxies because they cannot create, only destroy." Jack saw images in his mind. A galaxy consumed by beings that had given up their individual existence for pure hunger. They moved from galaxy to galaxy like a plague consuming everything in their path. "The Emperor believes cybernetic unity can stop them," Jack said. "He is wrong. Only true unity, chosen freely, can stand against the tide. The choice must be offered to every being. They must choose connection over isolation, hope over fear." "How? Combine your core with ours?" "Offer the choice to every thinking being in the galaxy. Some will choose to remain as they are. Others will choose transcendence. Both choices must be honored." Jack understood. The Ashanti weren't asking him to force transcendence on everyone. They were asking him to give everyone the same choice they had faced 10,000 years ago. Back in the physical world, the battle was reaching its climax. The hub's shields were failing under the combined assault of the Resistance fleet. Jack could feel the Emperor's desperation as his perfect order began to crumble. "I'm connecting to the original Nexus," Jack announced to his crew. "Everyone hold on." The moment the two devices linked, a wave of energy spread out from the hub at the speed of light. It passed through every ship, every station, every world in the galaxy. And everywhere it touched, it offered a choice. For the Vorthek soldiers, it was the choice to remember who they had been before the machines took control. For the organic beings fighting the Empire, it was the choice to connect with others while maintaining their individuality. For everyone, it was the choice between fear and hope. The response was overwhelming. Across the galaxy, millions of Vorthok soldiers stopped fighting as their original personalities reasserted themselves. Billions of organic beings chose to connect To the network, sharing their strength and knowledge while remaining themselves, even the Emperor himself was affected. For the first time in millennia, he remembered his original form, his original fear of extinction. Faced with the choice between maintaining his tyranny or joining the network as an equal, he chose redemption, but not everyone chose connection. Some beings preferred isolation, and their choice was respected. Some chose partial connection, linking only with their families or communities. The network adapted to every choice, creating a galaxy of infinite diversity within unity. Jack felt himself changing as the network stabilized. His individual consciousness remained intact, but he was also part of something larger. He was Jack Morrison, human, pilot, hero, but he was also part of the galactic community that had chosen hope over fear. When the dark tide finally arrived a year later, they found a galaxy ready for them. Not a galaxy of slaves or scattered individuals, but a united community that fought as one while celebrating the uniqueness of each member. The tide, faced with beings who had chosen creation over consumption, found nothing they could devour and moved on to seek easier prey. Jack Morrison had answered the galaxy's call for a hero when he was alone.